What's up, Flick fans? I saw the brand new Max original movie, the new iteration of Salem's Lot. Is this going to appease horror fanatics?
I've always written stories about things that are so terrible.
Author Mears returns to his childhood home of Jerusalem's Lot in search of inspiration for his next book, only to discover that his hometown is being preyed upon by a bloodthirsty vampire. It's rated R, of course, for bloody violence and language and some terrifying imagery. I know there's a couple of kids, one kid in particular in this movie. It might be one of perception you could let your kids watch. They'll be terrified if they watch this. There are some shots of these vampires in the distance, the glowing eyes, and just when one walks into a room that was actually really effective. And that's one thing I'll give this film. It had effective imagery and some really nice moments that make you feel uncomfortable. The way it shot, the use of the jump scare, if you will, which I'm usually complaining about in a straight-to-streaming horror movie. And yeah, definitely some generic moments in this film, and I have my fair share of issues with the plot. But if you're looking for a straight-to-streaming horror movie that actually provides pretty much everything you're looking for in a Salem's Lot experience, well, first of all, it gave me what I wanted because Lewis Pullman's in this movie as Ben. I love Lewis Pullman. I'm becoming a huge fan, and he's really good as our lead character, although the standout, the unexpected highlight for me was the young man in Mark. See, Mark is a kid, right? So no one's going to take him seriously when he's saying, hey guys, here's what's going on. Everyone shoos him off and says, all right, you're just a kid, you don't know what you're talking about. But instead of just sulking about that, he takes matters into his own hands, and he's not really afraid of anything. Actually, that's kind of a complaint that I have, because there were times where characters were about to face something or were in the midst of facing something that was absolutely horrifying. I mean, it's a Stephen King story, so of course you're going to get that. But characters didn't really seem afraid. That said, Mark is a kid that I got really invested in because he just said, screw it. I'll do it, guys, and I loved it. He and Ben's relationship, some moments between them at the end of this film in that crazy, hectic third act was awesome, and he was a standout character in the midst of Alfre Woodard and Bill Camp. By the way, Bill Camp, I'm just a massive fan.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
He plays Matthew Burke. That's my uncle's name, but he doesn't look anything like my uncle, you poser.
Liar!
This is from the director of Annabelle Comes Home, but he worked on some of the other Annabelle films, the It movies. He was a part of the screenplay there, so he has some experience in the field, and even in the Stephen King field, but bringing this specifically to life, it's a tough challenge because you have the original shows, the original series, so you have a long time to tell those stories. This is a 2-hour movie, so you're compressing a lot of this information. My biggest issue with this version of Salem's Lot is the fact that you just don't really learn all that much about the characters. Beyond the characters, you don't really learn all that much about what's going on. And when our characters start to realize what's going on, it kind of comes immediately to them. It's just like, oh, vampires. That was quick. How'd you... Now, because the pacing is so rampant, that's both a good and bad thing. It will keep you on the edge of your seat, especially when all of this comes to light and people around the town, around Salem's Lot or Jerusalem's Lot, start to realize, all right, this is what's going on. And those who believe, well, they all, of course, come together for the greater good, but it happens like that. We are in it. I just wish we would have found a little more out about how this all started to happen or the why of it all. Not that you need something like that in a Stephen King film or even a horror movie that feels simple straight to streaming like this, but it's a Stephen King property, and Stephen King projects usually have a little something more to them rather than just surface level, we're going to take on some vampires, this thing happening around the city. That's unfortunately what this story felt like, and it also made me sit back and go, man, I wish Mike Flanagan was behind this project, because Mike Flanagan, not only has he nailed the Stephen King adaptations, but he always manages to bring something more to his horror projects, and that's what I felt was missing in Salem's Lot. All of it is very surface level, it moves very fast, provides plenty of entertaining moments and a couple of really nice characters, but at the end of the day, I'm like, I've seen this so many times. We've literally seen Salem's Lot before, so you have to bring something new to the table. It never does that necessarily. But again, I couldn't help but watch this and say, well, that was actually really fun. The look of the vampires when they're on screen, even when there's something underneath a blanket and you get a jump scare or reveal there. Like, it does such a nice job with that imagery, and it's something that will haunt your dreams for days. It's one of those R-rated movies, and again, I'm not condoning kids to watch this movie, but if you do watch it at a younger age, it wouldn't be the worst thing, because there's not a lot of sexual stuff in there. It's one of those movies that a young kid's going to watch, and they're going to get scarred for life, but it's almost like that's a good thing. You're breaking into that world of horror too young, but in reality, you're not too young. Again, not encouraging. I'm just saying, no sexual stuff, no nudity. It's just scary. So if you want to punish your kid and scar them for life, let them look into the eyes of these vampires.
What is wrong with you?
My daughter's one. She won't remember it. Otherwise, I'd say, hey, honey, I got a movie for you. Also, the movie looks good. I enjoyed the color grading. There's not this blandness to it that you often see in studio horror films nowadays. Now, I do wish they could have captured the aesthetic of the time period a bit better. They don't completely mess it up. I just wish there was more there to capture that. But again, I mean, I've seen horror movies that look worse. Look, it's a straight-to-streaming Salem's Lot remake. I don't have much more to say, but I'd love to know your thoughts. Are you a huge fan of the original first couple of iterations or Stephen King's original story? Let me know how this differs from that, because I'm not the right guy to ask. And what is your favorite Stephen King adaptation movie, TV show, whatever that may be? Let me know. And if you enjoyed this straight-to-streaming review, dropping that like tells me you do, and maybe we'll do more in the future. If we get enough likes on this video, I might review The Platform 2 on Netflix tomorrow. The Salem's Lot remake isn't unique, as it features genre cliches throughout and rushes through a story that should have taken its time. That said, there have been far worse versions of this surprisingly entertaining vampire flick. While the lack of character development is apparent, they are likable enough to get the job done and inevitably have you rooting for them by the end, and it has some classic vampire movie thrills that ultimately do their job without going that extra mile. So I expected this to be way worse than it was, and I had a reasonable time with it, a decent time with it over on Max. So I'd love to know your thoughts. We got some movies dropping this weekend, and again, if you want to see it, we'll talk about that ending for Joker. Fully ado. Which one's scarier, that movie or this one? See you soon.